Good morning. Welcome to the First Parish Church of Stowe and Acton. My name is Cindy Landrum, and I'm the minister here. We are a welcoming and spiritual community, and for those who are visiting for the first time at FPC, we welcome you. Please let us know you're here by filling out one of our visitor information cards. They should be in your pews, or ask an usher for one, and hand it to an usher, or drop it in a plate, or hand it to Meg, who's there in the back, our welcoming coordinator. So I and our staff and our board are listed on your order of service, and please feel free to ask any of us for information after the service, or if you're online, drop it in the chat if you have any questions. If you would like a large print order of service or hymnal or an assisted listening device, please ask one of our ushers. Our assisted listening devices, we want you to know, are actually small radios, so if you have a need to step out of the sanctuary and listen to the service at any other place at any other time, you can ask for one of those to do that. And after the service, please join us for coffee and conversation in our fellowship hall. I understand if you go to the guest tables table, there will be muffins there. So that's an extra incentive to learn more about our guest table program for whom our offering is taken today. And I'd like to draw your attention to the announcements in the order of service, and also invite you to check out our webpage for more information. You can sign up there for newsletters and alerts. A couple of announcements I'd like to tell you about. The first is on Friday, December 2nd, we are having an evening of Hewett. This is instead of our customary In Days of Yore holiday party, which we had pre-pandemic, we're doing an evening of cozy comfort. And so please come to that, 6 to 9 p.m. on the 22nd. Next weekend is our, I keep calling it the Not Christmas, Not Vespers, but our special musical evening on the 17th, which is an evening of interfaith music and story and readings, and it's going to be really wonderful. What time is that, Trevor? Do you know? You just know what time you have to show up.
I just know what time.
You all can tell me what time. 5. Yeah, I didn't want to get that wrong. On the 24th, Christmas Eve, we are having 2 services, but not at the usual times. Instead of a 4 p.m. and a 9 p.m., we're doing, because Christmas Eve is on Sunday, we're doing a morning service and then 9 p.m. So 10 a.m. for the family service and 9 p.m. for our traditional carols and candles service. So I think that takes you through most of the upcoming big events. Again, the rest are in your orders of service. And now, because we have more time in today's service, since the children are all down in Children's Chapel, I invite you to greet your neighbor. One last announcement as we come together in the spirit of worship, and that is that on Saturday we have our special memorial service for Shirley Farmer at 1, I think we technically said 1:15, because at 1 o'clock we'll be ringing the bells 100 times, and that's going to take a while, so the service will actually begin a few minutes later. We're still looking for sign-up helpers and check your announcements for the sign-up sheet for potluck, for setting up tables and stuff for the potluck, and for cleaning up and taking down tables after the potluck. So if you're able to help in that regard, we would really appreciate it. Our opening words are by Phillip Hewett. From the fragmented world of our everyday lives, we gather together in search of wholeness. By many cares and preoccupations, by diverse and selfish aims, are we separated from one another and divided within ourselves. Yet we know that no branch is utterly severed from the tree of life that sustains us all. We cherish our oneness with those around us and the countless generations that have gone before us. We would hold fast to all of good we inherit, even as we would leave behind us the outworn and the false. We would escape from bondage to the ideas of our own day and from the delusions of our own fancy. Let us labor in the hope for the dawning of a new day, without hatred, violence, and injustice. Let us nurture the growth in our own lives of the love that is shown in the lives of the greatest of men and women, the rays of whose lamps still illumine our way. In this spirit we gather, in this spirit we pray. And on this second week of Advent, in a time of Hanukkah, and while we dream of ceasefires, we light candles for peace. Peace in our world, peace in our own lives, peace to carry us into a future with less violence and lives lost. In this season, as we head towards the darkest night of the year and a rebirth of the sun, we say these hopes aloud once more. Peace, peace, peace. And as I light our Advent candles and chalice, please rise in body or in spirit and join in singing our opening hymn, a Hanukkah hymn, 221, Light One Candle.
Thank you.
And please join in our covenant and affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. A special thing this morning. We are in the middle of the Hanukkah season, and so one of our children and youth is going to talk to us today about the Hanukkah menorah. Do that up here or down there? And now as we head into a time of prayer and sharing, I want to acknowledge, too, that this service is being held by a community that gathers on the stolen traditional land of the Massachusetts, Nipmuc, Pawtucket, and Wampanoag people. We pay respect to those Indigenous people who lost their lives in the colonization of this land and recognize that these Indigenous tribes are still today facing violations of sovereignty, of territory, and of water. We also give thanks for the earth we walk upon and the waters, the life-giving plants, all the earth's creatures, the sun, wind, moon, and stars. And we recognize that this is just a first step in moving towards right relationship with Native peoples and the healing of the earth. And at this time, I invite you to share your joys and sorrows that you've brought with you to this community today, that they might be lifted up and known by each other. We'll begin with our lay minister sharing those that we've received from off-site or by email, and then we'll turn to those in the hall and then those off-site. You know, the reason I ask our lay ministers to do this every week is so that you know who they are, because our lay ministers are people you can reach out to in times of sorrow and struggle, as well as myself, for bringing comfort and conversation or just a spiritual presence to you as you're walking through hard times. And so that's why we lift them up every week at this point in the service, but I just wanted to say that occasionally so that you know why. Anne.
And you can contact the lay ministers through the caring email that will get to us.
And sorrows that are left unshared, held in our hearts and minds, that they too are lifted up in religious community. Our words for prayer meditation today are titled Ibrahim's Prayer by Jan Taddeo. Beloved children of the oneness of many names, you who cover the land in numbers greater than the stars, I petition you, I pray to you, because you are the fruit of God's promise to the world, because each of you holds a piece of the truth of all that is, because the vision of beloved community needs each one of you. And this is what I pray. Show loving kindness to one another. Use wisely the unique gifts of your humanity, your free will, imagination, creativity, compassion, your knowledge, power of understanding and awareness, all that is an image of the highest good. See the beauty in your cousin's eye, the wisdom in your sibling's smile. Listen for the truth which is unspoken in each heart. Hold one another with tenderness and allow love to transcend fear. Fear that too often darkens your thoughts and poisons your heart. Come together, followers of Moses and Jesus and Mohammed, peace be upon them all. Embrace the children and followers of all the prophets who call us towards peace. All the seekers and people of goodwill, adore all that emerges from the mystery of life. Treasure one another. Call forth wholeness for your fellow creatures. Protect and renew the sustenance for life, the earth, the air, the water. Hold the fire with gentleness. Use it wisely for growth and goodness. Come together from the deserts, the mountains, the wetlands, and shores. Lift the veil of indifference, learn to understand one another's plight, and share in the beauty, wonder, joy, and awe of life. Love, mercy, and kindness. Walk humbly with one another and with all creation. Love your neighbors as you love yourself. Give to others the full measure of your goodness, so they will give unto you the same. As you honor the covenant of your traditions, may you also covenant with all people of goodwill, a covenant of love, compassion, humility, generosity, gratitude, and celebration. May it always be so. Peace, salam, shalom. Blessed be. Amen. Blessed be. Amen. Our next hymn is number 159. This is my song in your gray hymnals. Please rise in body or in spirit, or remain seated if that's more meditative for you, but join in singing. And turn in your hymnals to number 567. I'm doing something I haven't done in a long time. It's a responsive reading. Oh my goodness. I'll read the regular type and you please join in the italics. We're doing this old school out of the hymnals instead of up on the screens. I want to be with people who submerge in the task, who go to the fields, harvest, and work and grow, and pass the bags along, who stand in the line and haul in their places, who bring out our generals and yield desserts, but move in a common rhythm, where food must come in, or the fire be put out. The work of the world is common as mud. Botched, it smears the hand, crumbles to dust. Greek amphoras for wine or oil, Hopi vases that held corn are put in museums, but you know they were made to be used. So each week we split our plate here at FPC between organizations that we have voted on and chosen to support, and our own work of this congregation to keep up our buildings and our utilities and our staff and our programs. So this month we're sharing our plate with one of our own organizations, FPC's Guest Table, which puts on a monthly dinner that we have that's open to the community. And most of the people who come aren't FPCers. I think there were like 3 or 4 in addition to me this past Friday when we had our wonderful meal. The meal was served by Girl Scouts who were doing some service hours, and the soup and cornbread and salad were wonderful. And I assume the desserts were as well, although I left before dessert. Every month when I go, which is not every month, but every time I go, I have wonderful conversations with members of the greater community, and I've learned important Beatles facts that are going to be used in our worship service in a couple months, and all sorts of things. I invite you to give generously to support FPC's Guest Table and the work of this congregation. Chris.
I'll invite the choir to come up while I introduce the anthem. This is a song written by 2 women. The first is Manal Hraip, a Palestinian social psychologist and Israeli citizen. She originally wrote the lyrics to Between Darkness and Light in Arabic and Hebrew, and she wrote them as they came down in a meditation while she was preparing for a peace event in Nazareth in 2007. She writes that the lyrics were a message from her inner guide about the nature and mission of her soul as a heart healer for separation and as a peacemaker, because in peace work we meet both in the darkness and the light. Israeli Jewish singer-songwriter Daphne Rosenberg was given Manal's lyrics by a mutual friend, and she says within minutes the melody came down. When they met in Nazareth, they heard the song, created a dance for it, translated it into English, and that same evening, they were in a big group of Israelis and Palestinians dancing and singing to the words and music of the song in 3 languages. The act of singing together as Israelis and Palestinians on that day marked their deep difference, but also claimed their commitment to peacemaking between their peoples. The intertwining of 2 vocal parts is a metaphor for the way that love breaks down boundaries. And here's the song Between Darkness and Light.
Oh
Thank you so much, Chris, Trevor, choir. The anthem is when I get to worship every Sunday, and worship I did during that number today. Thank you. How powerful. This fall, we've been having a 4-part sermon series about our spiritual types based on the book Four Spiritualities by Peter Tufts Richardson, which is unfortunately out of print. And I thought about whether or not to come back to part 4 today in the midst of all that we're in right now. But I decided to do so because I think that the point of this whole series has been about embracing diversity. Embracing the spiritual diversity that exists within us, which is not unkin to the religious diversity that we need to be celebrated and uplifted around the world. So to repeat just a little background, the 4 spiritual types in this book are correlated with 4 personality types from the Myers-Briggs Personality Inventory, the MBTI. And what is pertinent to know is whether you are more of a thinker or a feeler, more of a sensing person or an intuitive person. Sensing people focus on the here and now and are practical, step-by-step thinkers, and intuitive people are likely to follow hunches and read between the lines and focus on the big picture. And the other 3 types have been the intuitive thinkers, who are on the journey of unity, sensing feelers on the journey of devotion, and intuitive feelers on the journey of harmony. And so this week we turn to our last group, the sensing thinkers, and theirs is the journey of works. Thinking about this, it makes sense. Sensing people are focused on the here and now, not the big picture and future. So they want to get down to action. And while thinkers may want to stop and think things through, the feelers are just going with their gut reaction. But our thinkers in this case are people who are thinking about the here and the now. And so the sensing thinkers are the ones who are like, why do we need to sit down and discuss? We've thought this through already, let's get to work. What's so interesting about these spiritual types to me is finding that people's ideas of spirituality can be so varied. It helps me understand why some people have a hard time understanding my own spirituality and even seeing me sometimes as spiritual, and while I sometimes have a hard time in understanding other particular types and looking at how these types are so varied and different spiritual aspects and how different the spiritual aspects and beliefs can be, it brings me a sense of peace and unity. In every type, there will be some aspects that to some people who will hear about it and be unable to relate to, and perhaps say, I never thought of that as spiritual, and yet they most profoundly are. So sensing thinkers represent a large percentage of the population at about 38%, and so this type of spirituality is actually a pretty common one. But however, sometimes the spiritual journey of these sensing thinkers is often unfairly disregarded as not spiritual. Sensing thinkers divide into 2 groups depending on another personality trait, whether they prefer openness or closure, the perceiving and judging categories. And as Richardson writes, as teens, STs divide into 2 groups, the freedom lovers, the STPs, and the responsible ones, the STJs. STPs like action, variety, challenges. STJs like organized activities with serious results, often lead student groups at their schools, need order and measurable outcomes. He goes on to say, when they grow up, the STs become the realists, always in touch with the facts, unbiased, accurate, objective, and personal, giving full attention to tall and relevant details. This is an aspect of the sensing thinker because of that thinking orientation combined with the sensing, which is practical and here and now, step by step, of being a personality which will gravitate towards a spirituality which is well-defined, rational, and responsible. The spiritual journey that many sensing thinkers come to is the journey of works. And there are 8 manifestations of this journey, Peter Tufts Richardson writes, which don't have to be all experienced or experienced in order, but I'm just going to share with you the ones I think you might relate to the most strongly, which are a strong sense of what's right, a sense of responsibility and stewardship for personal, social, and natural resources, and the idea that work itself is life's aim and fulfillment, and lastly, being realists. One spiritual trait of STs that might be harder for some others to relate to is an often tragic sense of justification. Richardson explains this through the example of Job in the Bible, in the Hebrew Bible, which she describes as a righteous man grounded in the practical realities of prosperous herding and householding, who by all rights has pursued an exemplary journey of works. And when I was in college at the University of Michigan, I took a class from a wonderful professor named Ralph Williams, and the class was the Bible as Literature. It was through the literature department. And Ralph and the course were very popular, and he told us at the beginning of the class that he would not be covering Job. He didn't have time for it. So he said, because Job is so troubling, he knows, he'll hold 2 extra evening lectures on Job that you can come to if you want to. Not only did we all show up for extra lectures, but we brought our friends, and the house was packed to hear Professor Williams talk about the power of Job, this disturbing, tragic figure who is a good man, and God and Satan create a bet, and Job is persecuted over and over again, family and children dying, crops killed, cattle killed, house destroyed, until he's left with nothing. That isn't as troubling that Satan does this as it is that God endorses it to prove who Job is. And the book of Job ends with God restoring Job's fortune, giving him a new wife and new kids. But we all know that the trauma of his story remains. And Richardson says this is an example of the need of many STs for everything to come out as it should, a literal view of a moral order that rewards and punishes sooner or later in all cases. But also, I would add, this is believing that yes, maybe the arc of the universe does bend towards justice, but sometimes for the STs it doesn't. Ultimately, even though we can't see it right now, they would say, no, it didn't come out the way it should. Richardson argues that this tragic sense that the world is always opposing us makes the sensing thinker on the journey of works work harder in order to oppose these forces. I would say the theologian Cornel West, in one of my favorite quotes, is expressing this when he talks about the difference between optimism and hope. And you've heard me quote this before. Cornel West says, optimism adopts the role of the spectator who surveys the evidence in order to infer that things are going to get better, and yet the evidence does not look good. Yet we know that the evidence does not look good. The dominant tendencies of our day are unregulated global capitalism, racial balkanization, social breakdown, and individual depression. Hope enacts the stance of the participant who actively struggles against the evidence in order to change the deadly tides of wealth equality, group xenophobia, and personal despair. And so the people who are our ST people, they are the people who keep on working, whether that's because they're following the rules and the steps, or whether that's because they know it's all going to break down eventually, but they're going to do what they can. The people who keep a church running and orderly are often on this journey of works. The works can be in stewardship because of their sense of responsibility and order, or it can be on the building and grounds. Whatever it is, people on the journey of works are likely to choose work that is a vocation to them, that is spiritual in meaning and fits their understanding of order and rightness. Right now, these STs are leading our society in some ways, and they're the ones fighting for change in some ways in the situation of Israel and Gaza. They're not necessarily the ones debating, saying, okay, let's look at the big picture and the history and look at all these different parameters. They're the ones responding out on the streets, saying we need change now, not after debate and looking at the big picture, but change now because people are dying. They're using logic and systematic thinking, but doing it in the acting now, planning protests because of the strong sense of what's right and the need for moral action, because of who they are at their core. What can be hard about that for those of us who are on a different path is this strong sense of righteousness that the STs often have. It's this way, or you're against us. It's this way, or you're going against God. Follow these rules, people might say, on the more fundamentalist path of the STs. And on the progressive path, they might say, stand with us, or you're on the side of the oppressor. This is a strong sense for some branches of the sensing thinkers, which makes it difficult in working with those types that are different. These sensing thinkers are an interesting bunch because of the ways in which they're drawn to rules and to rubrics for their faith to have a strong structural underpinning, and that can make it very harmonious with fundamentalism. But also, falling back, and so they can fall back on these biblical 10 commandments or the 5 pillars of Islam, and this can be an underpinning for the sensing thinker. But too, that same absolutism of those principles, pillars, commandments can lead to the exact opposite in what I call a fundamental atheism. That the Bible can't be right because it says this, and that's wrong, so therefore it's all wrong. It says it's the word of God, so if it's wrong, there is no God. When the rules fail, the world fails. God is a failure also. That same professor I mentioned earlier, I took a class on the Holocaust writer Primo Levi from him. It was a 1-credit class, and I didn't do well in it because I didn't devote it the time it needed, but I went just to hear this professor speak. And so it was worth getting a C in 1 credit just to have the time to go in there for an hour a week in this 1 credit and listen to him talk. Primo Levi, when asked if he believed in God, said this: God cannot exist if Auschwitz exists. Bam. Or in more words, he said, today, I think that if for no other reason than an Auschwitz existed, no one in our age should speak of providence. He didn't mean the city in Rhode Island. He meant the kingdom come. But just as ST theology can fit with fundamentalism or with liberal religion, all the paths we've discussed can. And so now as we come to an end of this exploration, I want to look at them together as a whole, because we need all of them. What we need to understand is that all of these paths are spiritual, and all of them are helpful and hopeful in the world right now. So let us remember, when we're divided into our thinking and our feeling, into intuitive and sensing, just starting with these 2 binaries and looking at the world right now becomes really apparent when we're talking about a situation like in Israel and Gaza. As we're so focused right now on the horrors taking place, that we need not just to find a middle ground between heads and hearts, we need all of our heads and all of our hearts together to find the answer. And so too do we need to not find the middle between intuitive and sensing. We need all of our intuition and all of our sensing to find the path forward. Looking at this, we need both the step-by-step rubrics and the big picture. We need all of our hearts and all of our minds, and we need both in their fullness, not watering them down to try and find a middle ground. And so it is that we need to embrace the very different spiritualities of our people and not say only that this way is spiritual or only that way is the way that belongs in church. For those who find spirituality and devotion are sensing feelers, we need to include meditations and those quiet contemplative moments. For those on the path of harmony, our intuitive feelers, we need the healing and connection of the joys and sorrows and times in the service that we offer sometimes in the service, like today, but sometimes after the service for connecting to the bigger community. For those on the path of unity, our big picture intuitive thinkers, we need sermons which open us up sometimes, I hope, to big ideas. And for those here on this path, the path of works, we need to get down to business, to talk about how to take action, and more importantly, to do it. The goal in all of this has been to invite us to see things through different lenses, to appreciate that which is so different from our own. For me, I'm thinking and feeling, but I'm much stronger in the intuitive and much less in the sensing. But I've come to appreciate the beauty of the path of harmony and the get-down-to-itness of our path of works. And if we embrace this diversity of faith and come to appreciate that which is different to our own, we're capable of so much more than if we're divided and exclusionary. So I close with Peter Tufts Richardson's words about the goal of life, which is what spirituality is all about. The goal of our four spiritualities complement one another. For spirituality is divided through four lenses we can call the absorption ideal, the NT, the compassion ideal, SF, the stewardship ideal, ST, and the fulfillment ideal, NF. To know the one, NT, to be devoted to oneness in others, SF, to guard and guide the integrity of oneness in the world, ST, to explore potentials for realization of the one, NF, all form an intimate acquaintance with spiritual reality, the goal of life. Our native journeys, fully explored, bring us all together in the fullest human integrity and kinship. When you hear the call in your spirit, follow, deepen, return, for in your life you may become one in eternity. May it be so. Our closing hymn turns us towards Christmas with People Look East, the Advent song, number 226. Please rise in body or in spirit. My closing words are by a mentor of mine, Kendall R. Gibbons. There is, finally, only one thing that is required of us. That is to take life whole, the sunlight and shadows together, to live the life that is given us with courage and honor and truth. We have such a little moment out of the vastness of time for all our wondering and loving. Therefore, let there be no half-heartedness. Rather, let the soul be ardent in its pain, in its yearning, in its praise. Then shall peace enfold our days, and glory shall not fade from our lives. Please join in our closing song.